everyone else.
Okay. Let me just bring in Professor Joe Goldblatt, who's the co-chair of the Edinburgh Interfaith Association. Professor Joe, thanks so much for coming on. Again, it's such a horrendous situation to be discussing, and I think we've heard as much as we know already in terms of the current situation there. But what would you add to that?
Good morning. Connie, every morning I recite my prayers, and in my prayers I remember those we have lost, and I also ask for comfort for the bereaved. So first this morning I asked for comfort for the families and friends of those two young people who simply wanted to attend an event about public service and lost their lives through murder last evening in Washington, D.C. It's quite sad because it could happen to anyone, but in this case they were targeted because of the politics that's going on in the world right now. But the good news is the Edinburgh Interfaith Association, after the tragedy of October the 7th, organized an event within a few weeks' notice at St. Mary's Cathedral, the West End of Edinburgh, and 500 people attended to pray for peace, to listen to poems, to listen to music, prayers from 20 different religious backgrounds. And do you know, Connie, they arrived 1 hour early before the start of the program just because in the aftermath of the 7th of October, they needed to be together as a community. So I believe now is the time, while we're filled with emotion, as I certainly am this morning, to look to the future and see how we can work more constructively together. The Interfaith Association also is the coordinator of the first ever Jewish-Muslim dialogue program in the city of Edinburgh. And this program has been going on since September. They meet bi-monthly, and it's been very effective in bringing these two populations together through dialogue. So let's look positively to the future, I hope.
Just going back to that and clarifying for people maybe who are just joining us, the couple that you're referring to Israeli embassy workers shot dead in Washington, D.C. last night, attending or outside a Jewish museum in downtown Washington. Officials say that the couple were due to be married. They were engaged and they were focused on an event focused on helping Gazans at the Capital Jewish Museum. So that is all we know on that so far. But going back to what you said about this idea of coming together, Joe, and this idea of when things are as bad as they are, as we've been hearing about this morning, there has to be in some way an element of hope, even when things are so desperate and people are in so much despair. How do you get that in situations where people are starving to death?
The answer is dialogue. I have been to Israel and to Palestine, to Gaza, multiple times in my career. There is not one person I've ever met on the ground that wants anything other than immediate peace. The state of Israel, the country, should be a two-state solution so that all can live permanently in peace. And in fact, when the Balfour Agreement was written and signed, those words are enshrined, that it is a land for all people, not just the Jewish people or the Arab people, but all people. So we need to increase the dialogue, and I like what your speaker said about putting pressure on other countries because, as you know, Scotland has no devolved powers for international relations. We do this through the Westminster government. And so we as citizens need to remind our lawmakers that if they want to be reelected, they must represent the views of the people. And I believe the people want aid to get through, and they want an immediate ceasefire, and we want an enduring peace.
Stay with us if you can, Professor Joe. Just for a second, I want to speak to Gary, who's in Glasgow. Morning, Gary.
Morning.